Good morning, everyone. Good. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for your attendance with the Town Council, Monday, November 22nd. I would call the meeting to order at this time. Item A, added items. I will start with the first added item of 6A, a bank signing authorities. Are there any further added items? Seeing none, then, I would call for a motion to accept the added item to the agenda. Councillor Wilson,
I will make the motion to accept the added agenda item for bank signing authorities.
yes, bank signing authorities, 6A, item 6A. That's
Normally we just adopt the agenda as amended.
well. I don't see why there's a problem by just adopting the item in as well.
That's how you prefer to use it.
Thank you. We have a motion on the floor. Those in favor? That's carried. Those opposed? None. Adoption of the agenda, please. Anyone? Councillor Ryan.
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. I move that we adopt the agenda package for Monday, November 22nd at 10 a.m. in the council chambers as amended.
Thank you, Councillor Ryan. Any further questions? Those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Adoption of the previous minutes, item 2A in your agenda. Can I get a motion on the floor, please? Councillor Walsh.
Yeah, I'd like to move the minutes for November 8th, 2021, a regular council meeting to be adopted as presented.
Thank you, Councillor Walsh. Are there any questions in regards to the minutes? I'll call for the vote. Those in favor? That is carried. At this time, we have a presentation and delegations. Mountain View County Regional Parks, Recreation and Culture Master Plan, presented by Justin Rousseau, Managing Director of Expedition Management Consulting Limited. Mr. Merritt?
Good morning, everyone, and I'd ask Mr. Director Wagstaff to introduce Mr. Rousseau and for his presentation. Thank you.
And as the mayor has mentioned, we do have Expedition Inc. with us today. They are giving an update presentation to all the councils, so all the member councils that were involved in Mountain View County's region. And today they're starting with Old. So I will turn it over to Justin and his representing his team. And Justin, if at the start, if you can just acknowledge the team members that you had as well, please.
Oh, thank you. Once again, Justin Rousseau. Pleased to be here today to talk about the Regional Recreation Culture Master Plan. And as Doug mentioned, we've got a strong team working in behind the scenes on this project. In addition to myself, Maxwell Harrison, Senior Associate, was working with us, as well as Dinesh from Green Space Alliance and others. So pleased to be representing the team here today. Going to advance this thing here. So over the next few minutes here, about 10 to 15 minutes, I would like to present the highlights from the final master plan, and then of course opportunities for questions. I'll also speak briefly about the Case for Tourism document that was produced as sort of an additional scope of work here. So the overall deliverable of the project was to develop a regional recreation, parks and culture master plan that provide guidance to the municipal partners. And so it'll be your playbook working regionally around recreation, parks and culture for the next 10 years or so. The plan or the process started back at the beginning of the year, and started with phase 1, which was the data collection phase. It was a really busy community engagement phase in the spring, where we did multiple engagements in each community. The analysis and priority phase was in phase 3, the draft master plan here over summer and into early fall. And now we're at the completion of the project, the final master plan stage. The community engagement activities were fulsome. There was a very well-received resident survey, 900 and some responses to that. The youth survey also had over 100 responses, which we're really pleased to see. The stakeholder survey was another input. We had many stakeholder groups in each of the communities respond to that. Completed various interviews and engagement sessions with the community. Those were digital engagement sessions in phase 2, and then some in-person stuff in phase 4. We had some excellent conversations with youth, which we were really pleased to see. Sometimes these processes kind of forget about the youth voice, and we certainly heard that through this process. We did have council input workshops back in the spring, so we got council input at that point. We did review the draft plan with the community, and that was a mix of in-person and digital engagement. And overall, there were over 1,300 touch points throughout the process. So although community engagement was certainly an important input into the process, there were a wide variety of other inputs, including the benchmarks and standards, so looking at what other communities are doing, looking at your facility utilization of existing facilities, the supply of facilities in your communities, but also in the region as a whole, growth projections of your demographics and where you're going in the future, trends in recreation parks and culture, how the recreation parks and culture fit in with your current strategic direction. We also had in-person assessments from the consultant team. Multiple members of came to each community throughout the process. So we know that the Mountain View region today is a diverse place with urban and rural communities. There's a strong supply of certain facilities like aquatics facilities and curling rinks and halls. We know that you have an active user base that's actively involved in delivering services. You're collaborating really well, and this project is actually a good example of regional collaboration and a high level of support that for parks, recreation, and culture, and we saw that throughout the engagement process. We heard that. We did receive through the engagement process a lower level of satisfaction in some cases for some services. We know that your regional population is aging and that there is capacity in some cases to increase utilization of existing facilities in the region, and that those facilities are actually aging as we move forward here from decade to decade from when they were built. We also know that some of the facilities are lacking some accessibility, and so some of the recommendations speak to some of that. And some of the nonprofit organizations working out there delivering services are reporting, in some cases, a lack of sustainability, or that they're fearing sustainability issues. So in the future, Mountain View Region tomorrow, collaborating to meet facility and program needs is certainly a focus of the strategy, of the plan. Expanding and enhancing programming, and that was one of the areas where we heard from the public where there could be some opportunity for improvement is programming. Positioning recreation parks and culture to attract and retain residents, and linking those services to economic development. So the master plan does outline a vision for the future in the region. Our region will come together in the spirit of collaboration to ensure all our community members have the opportunity to enjoy the benefits of parks, recreation, and culture. We will strike the balance between preserving local autonomy and enhancing regional service provision. So we did hear from the community about a strong need to work collaboratively, but also a strong need to make sure that the unique value proposition of each community is retained. So the anticipated outcomes of implementing the master plan will result in parks, recreation, culture being a core municipal service, increased resident attraction and retention, which was a focus throughout the plan, through increased tourism and support for economic development. You'll be working together well to achieve mutual goals, and community members of all ages and abilities will report a high level of satisfaction. So we'd like to see a little bit of improvement there on the satisfaction levels. The implementation plan in the master plan focuses on three key areas: indoor facility, outdoor facility, and programming and service delivery. That's the way the master plan is organized. So out of all of that, there's we outlined a top 10 regional priorities list, and there's the plan is quite extensive. There's many priorities or action items regionally, but then also for each community. These are the top regional priorities that came through the process. So the first one is establishing a classification for local and regional facilities. So those, as mentioned in the vision around having those local assets, those core assets retained, but also a need for collaboration in the future. So this this sort of framework here outlines the types of facilities that would be local, you know, those core facilities that are currently in communities like ice arenas and aquatics facilities and others. Some facilities that could, you know, either go regionally or be local, and then some that we certainly see as potential for future regional facilities like field houses and future ice arenas, gymnastics facilities, and those types of facilities. So we heard a lot from folks about the development of a regional multipurpose leisure center to sort of serve some of the needs around facilities, particularly indoor facilities. And we saw lots of crossover between the needs of each of the communities around field house. That seemed to be something that resonated with each community: court space and an additional ice sheet, gymnastics, an indoor playground, which was really high on the list for Olds, climbing wall also, indoor track, and then if there was outdoor sport field development, that could also be a potential fit there. So looking at the feasibility of developing such a facility in the region. Number 3 here was to develop a master plan for a regional trails network, and trails certainly were a top outdoor facility that in most communities, that so regional trail development is number 3. Increasing utilization of existing ice arenas, and there is some opportunity, I think, to do that in certain places like Cremona, Sundre, and others, and also increasing that utilization in the short term, but definitely adding an additional ice surface in the region was identified here at number 4. Improving facility accessibility and overall inclusivity. And we know that there are some accessibility issues in the facilities throughout the region. And so that whether that be for people with reduced mobility, or women's change rooms, those kinds of things, there's certainly opportunity for improvement there. The next one is to seek opportunities to strengthen the recreation funding agreements with Mountain View County, and there is a process to do that in the agreements. So there's, but we did hear from the municipal partners about an opportunity to do that. Adopt a capital project evaluation criteria and process, and we do have in the appendix a suggested criteria for that. Conducting facility condition assessments, also really important. There are many condition assessments completed in the region, but there are also many that are not. And without really understanding the condition of your facilities, it's really hard to do any sort of planning. So kind of fixing that sort of gap would be in at number 8. The Regional Recreation Task Force at number 9, and so that task force has been working to develop this report, and so we would see that continuing on to make sure that you're continuing to work regionally on recreation activities and action items. And then the last one, developing a regional tourism strategy. And we heard from the partners early on about the link towards tourism and recreation assets. So that came in at number 10. Olds, so as mentioned, there's analysis and priorities for the region as a whole, but then each community, each partner community as well. For Olds, participating in that study of a regional multipurpose leisure center would be really important in our view to meet some of those indoor and outdoor facility needs that were identified through the process. Number 2 was studying the feasibility of relocating the Olds regional exhibition, and certainly that the lands there are in close proximity to recreation assets. So just exploring whether there's an opportunity to have some of those lands for recreation use in the future and relocate. Developing a gymnastics facility came up early and often. There is a very strong user base, not in Olds, but also throughout the region. And that one was certainly identified as a gap in the community. Improving accessibility at the old sportsplex, and this is for people with disabilities or storage and viewing and all those types of things. That came through at number 4. Expanding the local trail system. Trails was identified as number 1 outdoor asset. Continuing investment in public parks, and that's amenities and enhancements of existing public parks, certainly a strength, but an opportunity to continue on with that strength. Developing a new tennis and pickleball courts on town-owned land is at number 7. Continuing on with the outdoor rink program, which was quite successful for you last season. Enhancing your existing dog park, that's with amenities. And then positioning as a regional place for events. So in conclusion, the plan puts forward a strategic direction that will guide the region towards its vision. And if you remember, that's about working collaboratively and still maintaining the local culture of each community. And implementation will take sustained investment and collaborative effort from a wide variety of stakeholders in the region. I'll just take a few minutes now to talk a little bit about the case for tourism, which again was an additional project onto this. And so what the document does is describes some of the reasons why you might want to invest in tourism in the region, and we identified several areas, product areas that are important for the region. Sport tourism kind of was near the top here, and there's obvious links between recreation and sport tourism, nature-based tourism as well. Festivals and events, which we identify as a strength of Olds. Cultural tourism, and there's certainly some strong heritage and cultural assets in the region. Agritourism and culinary is, we link agritourism and culinary because of the obvious link there, farm to fork and all of that. And the rural nature here in the region is an important opportunity. Business tourism also, and so it's regional meetings and conferences and that type of thing. And then visiting friends and relatives tourism we know is an important market for the region, for Olds. And it accounts for a lot of the visitation actually that goes on. We expect coming out of COVID that individuals, visitors are going to want to reconnect with loved ones, so there's an opportunity there. The plan or the report also identifies some strategic recommendations in terms of developing a tourism product development and linking that regional tourism strategy that was recommended in the master plan, and it was identified that there's sort of a lack of market-ready tourism experiences for visitors. So that's what that's about, and establishing a regional tourism development task force was also a recommendation. So there's other key sort of recommendations outlined in that report, but the overall purpose for it is to kind of give you an initial snapshot of what the opportunity might be for tourism in the region, and to give some strategic direction for next steps. So with that, I'll open the floor for questions.
Thank you. It was a good read, and you certainly did brief it. Thank you very much. So I'll open the floor for questions at this time, if council has any questions. Excuse me. Council Ryan?
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. I would like to discuss more in depth, if we can, some of the areas of the report, such as pages going through and talking about your recommendations in a little bit more detail. So, starting with page, I believe it's 67, where we start talking about some of the recommendations that are just specifically Olds related. And I was just wondering about, you have this information with regards to conduct a feasibility study to examine the regional plan. And I'm just wondering, what would we be looking at for a possible cost involved in that? And if there is grant money available, who would participate in all of that? Would we have members of, would we put together a more fulsome committee, or from just specifically from Olds to discuss this, or would it be a regional committee? So I'm just kind of wondering if we could get a little bit of information from you on the specifics on organizing this feasibility study.
Thank you. Certainly we can provide a bit more background on that. So the purpose of the study would be to work regionally on it, because it is a regional facility feasibility study. So the presumption there would be that you would have a committee formed for that particular purpose that would have representation from all the potential municipal partners. Not unlike what you worked on with this particular study and the way that you work together with your regional partners. There were many opportunities that we saw through the engagement process with sort of shared need. As I mentioned, like the potential for a field house, an additional ice surface, and other amenities. So it would be exploring with your municipal partners, confirming that need and identifying what the program would be for that facility. What exactly would you be putting into that facility if you were going to build it, what the costs would be, what the operating costs would be, what the capital costs would be, and what the overall benefit and return on the investment would be. You could potentially look at doing a location analysis at the same time, or you might choose to do that in a future study. Sometimes if you focus a lot on the location, it can kind of dominate things, but you may choose to look at location analysis at that particular time, depending on how far down the road you want to go. But it's really about confirming the need, confirming the amenities, identifying the costs, identifying the benefit. And that's really the purpose of that study.
Supplemental, Council Ryan?
Yes, thank you. And what would be, my first comment would be the cost of doing something like this kind of a study, and are there any grants available for doing something? Because obviously you'd need to, this would be a fairly in-depth sort of study, looking at all the needs and identifying what you would actually want to put in that building. So could you give a little bit of an idea of that?
Well, a lot of it depends on the extent that you want the study, what the scope of the study, right? I mean, if you're going back and you're doing full community engagement on it, if you're obviously going to want to do a program, but if you did a concept design, and to the extent that you wanted those technical expertise in terms of architecture and other, does affect cost. So I think in order to answer that, I think we gave a sort of an order of magnitude to be sort of around that. I'm not sure to the extent But I would like to kind of confirm the scope before I'd want to kind of throw a number out there, because it can be drastically different based on what your needs are.
And if we're referring to the document, can you please state whether it's the council agenda number you're using or the actual document number for everybody that's trying to find and be with you? So Director Wagstaff?
And I just wanted to add to what Justin had mentioned about the feasibility study, that one of the pieces to this is we're always looking for grants, both, the town of Olds as well as our municipal partners. This project itself was one that was a collaborative grant from the government of Alberta, where it was fully funded, not requiring funds from each individual municipality. So it was intended to drive collaboration regionally. That's one example of the types of grants that we would continue to seek. And of course, that's always dependent upon, the province of the day as to what extent those are going to be available. Second to that, there's also a lot of work that could be done, that is within our current existing practices without additional dollars. This is definitely going to be something for, councils and the CAOs within the municipal area partnership within MAP to consider, what measures and to guide their administrations, both individually as well as regionally.
Thank you. Are there any further questions on the table? Councillor Cummings?
Sorry, I'm just trying to get a mic that actually, a battery that works. So, timelines is, when we're talking about this one recommendation, A2.1 that we've been talking about here for the multi-purpose facility, if we include a field house idea in that with whatever we decide to put in there, with more, even if we use this particular report that's generated today as our need and our community engagement as done, and we decide this is what we're going to do as a region, we're going to put all these things into a building, here's the place we're going to put it in, we're going to do those types of surveys after this, and then we're going to build it, excluding cost. What kind of a time frame are we looking at before we could become operational if we decided to go ahead with this today?
So that feasibility study would be a 6 to 8 month sort of process. And working regionally, it might take a little bit longer than that. So that's that first feasibility start part of it. And I think, is your question about actually constructing and getting like the building open? Or?
In part, more so, I mean, a construction or building a building is kind of straightforward when we're looking at it. That's not the hard part. The hard part is the study line. So this study is asking us to do another study,
right,
to find out our particular needs for a particular building within the need, because we've got an idea of what our needs are and our wants are, and now what can we put into this building and what can we agree to put into this building. Then it was mentioned as well as a land use survey might be needed. I think you mentioned that. And then all of that process that I'm more or less unfamiliar with is the studying process that delays the construction process.
Right.
Construction process, yeah, let's put a shovel in the ground, a year later we've got a facility, that I understand. But the process now, because we've identified this community today, the snapshot of our community, their needs. If this takes 2, 3, 4 years to do, that'll be a completely different snapshot in 4 years.
right.
Well, not a completely different snapshot, but a significantly enough different snapshot. So if we're looking at something that's 4 or 5 years down the line, that's just what I'm looking for, is what kind of a time frame before we could actually put a shovel in the ground if this is what we decided to do, in your experience in the past, from beginning to end, as an estimate. Thank you.
You wanted to
Yes, I could get Director Wagstaff to help out here.
A couple of pieces, when you're talking about process. One is I'll give a little bit of a background to, what this document is following up on. So previously, there was a recreation, culture, and parks master plan that was done in 2008. And that master plan laid out very similar to what you see today, a number of ideas that could come to fruition if a council and a community decided to do so. In the case of Olds, we had exhausted that report's list of potential things since 2008. Our neighboring communities still had a number of items in each of their lists still left to do. So that, is part of the balance when you're talking regionally. Some of the municipalities may get deep into their list and others may take, more time depending upon their individual needs. That this is a strategic document to guide council's decisions over the next decade and beyond, as well as driving the conversations we're going to have with our community and community groups about what are the needs, what are the desires, and how are we going to balance that with the affordability. So there isn't a set timeline on there is the answer. That's all driven by council decisions and working with our community on, as you've seen here, what are the needs, what things can we collaborate with, and then what things are we able to afford and when. And so that drives the timeline more than, setting out today to say, by year 2 we'll have this, by year 5 we'll have this. It's all determined by council on their capital plan and as well as their operating investments.
Supplemental, Councillor Cummings?
Yeah, sorry, I understand that. I really do. That's why I started off with if we decided to go ahead with a multi-purpose facility like this, which seems to be the priority option that you've given us as an expert, if we decided to go ahead with this program today as a council and said, yep, we want to do this feasibility study, we want to, with an end goal of putting a shovel in the ground, in your experience throughout the region and the province, if we committed ourselves to this program today, what kind of a timeline are we looking at? So I do understand the fluidity of the decision-making process as to where we're going to go as a direction and all of the little nuances and stuff like that. What I'm really trying to get at here is just if we decided today as a council to go ahead with this type of program with all of the feasibility studies and what not needs to be done, environmental plans and so on and so forth, in your experience with going ahead with this type of project, what type of timeline would we be looking at if we were a gung-ho council just trying to get it done?
I could probably answer that again.
Okay.
From our own experience, that's a 3 to 5 years. From a green light to say, let's do the feasibility, let's engage our community on the needs, then let's get the scope of work, let's finance it, and then let's build it. That's 3 to 5 years when we're quick. And that even would be our experience with Rotary Athletic Park in comparison. By the time council said, let's move forward, it was 4 years on that project before it would have been prepared to be open.
Councillor Wilson?
Thank you, Your Worship. And thanks for the presentation, Justin. Just a couple questions, if I may. One is, the report references the jewel being Centennial Park. Just wondering what your thoughts are and recommendations would be to further leveraging Centennial Park within further development.
Thank you for the question, and yeah, I mean, that particular facility is a jewel. It's its proximity to downtown and other facilities in the area. One of the recommendations was to kind of look at development of a pocket park along downtown there would be some linkages to that particular facility. So kind of reaching out to the broader community with that one. Then other related one would be, whether you could access some adjacent lands for expansion. So there's some discussion in the report around that. And then just in terms of other outdoor facility development needs that were identified through the process, whether that be the tennis court and pickleball courts, whether there's opportunity there. We don't get into that level of detail in this particular study in terms of park planning. That would be a site-specific plan that you would need to do in the future. But but there's certainly opportunity there.
Okay. Thank you.
I'd like to ask either the CAO or Director Wagstaff or yourself, would this not have to take all Carstairs, Cremona, Disbury, Mount View County, Olds, and Sundries approval prior to even beginning that process? Would we all not have to approve this first? Because we're working together.
And are we talking now about the feasibility study again, or is this in term, can you maybe clarify the question?
CEO Merritt, I think he understands what I'm saying.
Yes, and thanks very much for that question. I do think it will take an engagement of all municipalities to understand what the scope is, to basically determine what the various needs are here. And then when you get to that is basically have discussions at the regional level, whether the map or the task force that's being presented to basically indicate that, yes, all municipalities should be involved. We did see with the other master plan is in most situations, the town of Falls went it alone with Mountain View County through our ICC to develop the Rotary Park and things of that nature. But it would be great if MAP could be engaged at the very beginning of this regional master plan so we can start actions quickly to see what the thought is. And I do hope that after all councils are presented to, that there will be a wrap-up report from yourself that will indicate where there was, what the questions were, what the commonality was, and what basically were some of the concerns of council. Because as Director Wagstaff said, it's 5 years is probably minimum on one of these things. None of these items are developed in our 10-year capital plan at this point in time, and that's really an essential thing once we start moving into it, is how that gets put in place for the one item is the capital, and then secondly is the operating expenses. If it's truly a regional place, what are we all contributing to it? And that will be independent of the location, because the location is something, again, that would have to be determined at the regional level. Hope that answers your...
It does. I do recall municipal area partnerships in the past discussing, and the biggest question on the table is where? Where are we going to put this? Closer to Olds, in the middle of the Mountain View County, Cremona? That was a stumble block for us. Any further questions? Councillor Ryan.
Thank you, Mayor Dahl, and through you to Justin. So I just want to get back to this feasibility study again. Do you foresee then the organization of this task force that you're talking about, would they be the ones that would undertake this feasibility study, or would they be hiring another consultant to do this work? What's your thoughts? Should it be like generated locally from the committee, or should it be from an outside body?
Well, typically, these are done in partnership, like this master plan was done. So working with your regional partners, those that are interested, and normally there are outside resources that are accessed, just to bring in the expertise on the assessment and the business case behind it, and potentially the program and concept design. These are all, these are all activities that normally require some sort of external advice, but I'm sure it would be up to the committee on how they wanted to proceed with that.
Okay, thank you very much.
Very good. Any further questions? Councillor Ryan.
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. I'll move along to another question then, if that's okay.
It certainly is.
So page 68 of our agenda package then, with regards to the recommendation on seeking opportunities through the existing agreements that we have, strengthening the funding agreements between the county and the urban municipal partners. What are we looking at here? Are you looking at opening up the agreements that we have already, saying that we should be seeking for additional funding, or what's your thoughts on this part?
Thank you for the question. And as I understand it, there's an opportunity every couple of years to review the terms of that agreement. And so we did hear from municipal partners about opportunities to strengthen it, for more communication, more transparency on what is funded, those types of opportunities for improvement. And so we are suggesting that the next time it comes around, that maybe a somewhat fulsome look of the agreements is done at that time. And so I'm not sure exactly when the date would be for that to occur, but you have it built into your agreement, so it's not a very long period where there's an opportunity to review.
Did that help?
Yes, thank you. That clarifies a little bit of it going
Ms.
forward.
CO Merritt?
Again, I think this is a golden opportunity for MAP to have a discussion in regards to the funding, but also the metrics that should be developed, that there's a consistency amongst them, and to basically get a better determination, I think, of what the breakdown of costs can be, and I think that's something with technology we have probably a better chance of getting at than we would have in 2008 to 12, so to speak, period of time. So I think there's going to have to be some excellent discussions at the MAP area and then back at various councils to have that engagement. So whether or not a task force is formed, and I think that's a possibility and probably a good idea, who's going to sit on the task force? Is it going to be officials, or is it going to be officials and or public to basically get input and things of that nature? I think that's a great discussion to be had at the MAP level initially.
Thank you. Councillor Ryan and then Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Mayor Dahl, and thank you, CEO Merritt, because that was going to be my next question on who would make up the task force and the costs involved in it, and who would pay for the organization and for the people sitting on that task force. So that's all good questions that would be raised, for sure.
Councillor Wilson?
Thank you, Your Worship, and at the risk of taking the discussion down a different path, I will try. Just wondering again your thoughts from a tourism perspective, the benefits of tourist centers, kiosks, things like that, and maybe I'm going down a rabbit hole and a path and more detailed, but do you have any thoughts there as far as things that would enable tourism in our area in Olds, like tourist centers?
So the question is around visitor information centers that would provide visitor information. And, that's a topic that many communities are sort of wrestling with the rise of digital engagement with visitors and the importance of apps and all of that. But there is some fairly recent research that indicates that pre-trip planning, really important with digital, obviously, but once the visitor is in destination in your community, that there is still a role to play for visitor information centers to provide that one-on-one counseling and also to provide hard copies of any materials. So there is still a role, but most communities are kind of wrestling with the cost benefit of visitor information centers. We find that those VICs that are most successful are those that integrate the bricks and mortar operations with digital, very closely linked. So if you go on a website and you're able to actually contact and chat with a person at a visitor information center, that's a counselor at the visitor information center, and there's a kind of seamless flow between the bricks and mortars facility and digital is where we see kind of the sweet spot there.
Good answer. Well, if there's no further questions, okay, Councillor Ryan?
Well, thank you. I mean, this is almost closing in on about a 200-page document here, so there's lots of questions I have. Don't know about anybody else, but I'm going to move along to something else, and that would be under the allocation of art, and that's page 71. My concern about, because you're talking about a policy to contribute 1% of capital project budgets to art, and I do actually have a concern with this because I know that I used to live in the city of Calgary, and they got into trouble, a ton of trouble with doing this, and lots of concerns and complaints with regards to putting any kind of a percentage towards art. I believe in the need for public art, but to put it into a policy, I'm not sure why we would want to go that route. Thanks, Doug. I just think that you're going down a slippery slope here with regards to that, and I'd like to hear from you as to, what your thoughts were in putting that in, and what other councillors think about that as well.
Thank you for the question. And so this was one where it was more of a general recommendation around a certain percentage. So not allocating 1%. I know in the analysis part of it says, in other communities they're allocating this percent, but the actual recommendation or action item is a percentage. So sort of leaving that flexibility open. I would say a few things here. One, it has to be a made in Olds and made in Mountain View County sort of policy that really fits with what you're doing. Some of the policies maybe have just been copy and pasted from community to community and applied in different ways, and maybe there's art put in places that people are just wondering, why is there art here? Like, it doesn't make sense. What we're trying to get at here is we've also seen new facilities built that didn't allocate any money for any sort of art within the facility, and you're left with these blank walls, institutional look that doesn't reflect the community. And so without some sort of thought put into how you would animate those facilities through public art, often it's the thing that's cut first, and then at the end of the day you don't have public art, and then you're scrambling through your operational budgets to meet that need. So that's why it's in there. It's intended to be fairly flexible, so you can pick and choose what you sort of want to do there and establish a policy that's made in your community.
Councillor Wilson?
Thank you, Your Worship. So similar along those lines with public art, and I agree that there is a role for public art to play in developing a community and municipality. You touched on it a little bit. I'm just wondering, is there a winning formula, a magic formula relative to public art? Because we started to have some discussions around, should that art reflect the culture and heritage of the community? I wonder, should it be very modern art? I think of in Calgary, they have the upside down church or house or whatever in the downtown core. I guess I'm just wondering what your thoughts are around what form and shape that public art should take.
We'll go to Director Wagstaff.
I think part of the answer was Justin's previous answer, where it says you want a made in Olds perspective, not just a cut and paste what is a common piece. So one of the pieces that we have created policy-wise is the Public Art Advisory Committee, and an opportunity for the Olds Council to defer this type of detailed question is what type of art. The council can guide the fiscal parameters, and then they can defer to the advisory committee on the particulars that would fit our community and the goals of council at the same time. The other piece to that, this 1%, and maybe Justin can speak to this a little bit further, it wasn't just a number that had been picked out of the air. That is, a common number that you find where there are policies in place, that you'll find policies that would put 1% of a capital project towards public art. So I'll let Justin maybe comment on the 1% and where that came from.
Yeah, thank you for that. That number was part of our trends review in terms of what other communities are doing, and it kind of provides a bit of background as to the allocation in other communities, and that's put in the analysis phase just for background. But again, when you go to develop your policy, it would be unique to you.
Yes, and I think we found that already with the discussion from the past council and the public art policy we even have. And it was always put in our budget in the past. Go ahead, Councillor Ryan.
Thank you. Just supplemental on that. So again, I'm going to voice my concern about that. I understand what other communities are doing, 1% or 2% or whatever. And again, I'm going to say City of Calgary got into all kinds of trouble. Multi-billion-dollar projects, and they have millions of dollars that they're putting in public art, and it created chaos within the, within some areas of the city. But what I'm saying is that once you have it in a master plan and and master plan is approved, then you're committed to whatever it is in this plan. Is that not the case? Or, correct me if I'm wrong.
Well, I think I could probably defer to the director or CEO on this, but from our the way this is presented, this isn't a statutory plan. This is a plan that will guide decision-making and will be subject to your annual review processes and your annual budget processes and decisions of councils.
Director Wagstaff.
And I follow up on that, one of the comments I was going to make as a closing piece is that we're going to revisit this, both administration and staff, as well as council, many times over the coming years, but certainly I'd suggest that maybe in a few months after we've had an opportunity as administration and staff to review this and council to take, more in-depth read, that we would return at a policies and procedures meeting and then begin to get into some of the detailed discussions that do you want to consider this? Do you want to consider them regionally? And then start to, map out, where we're going to go with these recommendations.
Councillor Cummings?
Thank you, Your Worship. Sorry. Just a quick question back onto the field house idea. So when I did because of course the term field house confused me for the first little while, so I did a little bit of research on field houses in Alberta and how they're structured. Was any consideration given to, in the master plan or in the conversations you had with the working groups, as to an anchor for a field house? Most are anchored by some particular professional or semi-professional sports group, which we don't really have in this area that would be a summer sport activity. So was that ever brought up or discussed in the conversations, to your knowledge?
Thank you for the question. It was really about meeting community needs as opposed to any one group or one professional group or anything like that. There was a shared among, I think, most of the communities around Fieldhouse, and that means, there could be some turf field in there, but the most successful Fieldhouse have multi-purpose gym space, and we did hear about the need for dry floor space from lacrosse, from others, and the need for training for various activities, and hosting court sports and all that sort of thing. So, again, those specific facility amenities, when you go through your feasibility study, you would be zeroing in on exactly what you would be doing there. There'll be lots of discussion around what types of facilities or amenities would go in that facility, but generally those core facilities are multi-purpose sport court, potentially a sport field in there as well, like a indoor soccer pitch, fitness center, potentially those types of things. And through your community, we certainly heard about gymnastics and indoor playground and those types of things as well.
Director Wagstaff.
And again, just this is almost more for a public comment, but also for council's interest, is that this report did take a look at our community inventory. So that is a mixture of not only town or municipally owned and operated facilities, but also took a look at the inventory of, in all of the communities in the region, of third parties that operate. Sometimes the municipality owns it, and then we have a third party operating. Other times there is a combination of that. And the third one maybe to explore that hasn't been explored as much in our region has been P3, so the public-private partnership in developing. Those have tended, I would comment, but this is seeding for further conversations. Those have tended to be more successful in larger communities than they have been in smaller and more remote rural communities. When I comment on the 3P.
I agree. That was good. And Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a brief question. When they mention youth centers, what's the target demographic for youth centers? And maybe a question for Director Wagstaff. I think the Sundre Youth Center is just recently opened. It's fairly new, but wondering if there's been any feedback from that youth center as to how it's operating.
I do not at this time. I do know from this engagement that we did hear a lot, a lot of comments about youth and seniors, and whether there was areas for them to congregate and participate in, both a sport recreation as well as cultural recreation.
And when we say youth center, what is the target demographic age-wise?
Well, generally it's like that 12 to 17, but some youth centers you'll see younger children in there as well. And I would challenge you to think not only like youth drop-in center, but other opportunities for youth. We know that court sports, like indoor and outdoor court sports, are great places for youth to hang out, and they're just hugely popular. We did hear that from your youth as well. And that's where some of these facilities where you have spontaneous drop-in activity, where it isn't so structured, where people can come and youth can come and shoot hoops and socialize and do other activities. So it doesn't necessarily have to be like a youth drop-in center necessarily. It could be culture or sport facility as well.
Well, we know that demographically facilities work, sharing that. Community Learning Camp is a great example of where nobody believed it would ever work, mixing high school students with college students, and it's been a great success. So I wouldn't want to shy off that concept for sure. Are there any further questions? Well, Councillor Ryan.
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. Can we go into the section that discusses the town of Olds and some of the facility priorities, page 89 of the agenda? And maybe we could talk a little bit in depth about some of these recommendations that you have, and not necessarily number one, which we've been addressing already, but number two, about the Olds Regional Exhibition Lands. What, it sounds like there could be some potential there. So what do you see as the ORE? What came from your observations? And did you look at all of the buildings that are over there on both the north side and the south side?
So the study, it's a master plan level, so it's pretty broad in terms of, no, we wouldn't have done like facility assessments on on the different facilities on their grounds. It's more about identifying, in these processes, we want to identify those lands that have high recreation potential. And that's an obvious location where you could potentially expand indoor and or outdoor assets and facilities in the community. It's prime land for that, and it's also prime commercial land, and so could be worked into some sort of a business case moving forward as well. At this stage, it's very broad strokes. It's like explore this opportunity. So it did kind of come through as a top priority, but at this stage, it's work with your partners and determine the feasibility of it.
Okay, thank you.
Do you have more questions?
I do.
Just continue then, and we'll
Thank
follow
you.
up from there.
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. I appreciate that. So going forward on the improvements that you were talking about with the improving accessibility at the sport decks, would you be able to talk a little bit about these areas? And do you foresee some of these that would be able to be done like within the next few years? Could we work it into our 10-year capital plan? Obviously those 10-year plans are, they're flexible. I mean, we could change them. They're plans for the future. So would you see something like this being able to work into the next couple of years? Are you looking at, or you're looking at farther afield, 5 or 10 years down the road?
Well, I think there's probably opportunities for short-term wins, but there's some challenges there in terms of the facility. And I wouldn't want to comment on what exactly would need to be done there. You would need to do an accessibility audit and really map out a plan. But there's some obvious limitations to the facility, and which is causing some of that reduced customer service. But I would want to do a detailed dive into that in terms of an accessibility audit and what the costs might be to solve those issues.
Okay, so obviously there might be some things we could work on in the short term, but
Yes, and
a
I
lot of
think-
these would be long, a
Yeah,
lot
I
of
think
these
you
would be
have
long
done,
term.
you are working on with what you have, but I'm sure that there's probably more you could do if you invested a little bit more, but I think some of them are gonna be bigger ticket items.
Oh, yeah, it looks like it to me too. Thank you.
Or Director Wagstaff?
A very general comment that facilities, public facilities that were built 40 years ago did not have a lens on them on those participants that would be requiring accessibility. And that's just the nature of any facility that was built in that era.
Councillor Cummings?
Just as a side question, if I can, Your Worship, to Director Wagstaff, the Sportsplex, because of this accessibility issue, is it meeting current legislation requirements for accessibility to a public facility?
It would for those that are viewing as a patron. It has significant challenges for anyone who would be participating on the floor level or ice level with accessibility. So the answer is yes, but not easily accommodatable.
Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Ryan, continue on.
Well, I'd like to see, is anybody else good or?
You're up next.
Okay, thank you. I really thought that it was great to see that some of these items we are already doing, and it's saying continue on with your investments such as the public parks, and we always look at our trail systems, we put money aside for developing our trail system, so that's great. And also the outdoor rinks. So the outdoor rinks I was interested in the fact that, our Director of Protection Services, Director Andrew, did a great job last year, and all of our volunteer firefighters who assisted, or paid on-call firefighters, I should say, in doing some of the rinks around town. What were you thinking, or did you even have, I guess, a solid outcome, I guess, for the outdoor rinks? Did you analyze how many we did and whether or not we should be doing that many again, or should we be doing a combination of outdoor rinks, a couple of ones that don't have boards? And I know that we don't have any with boards, but there seems to be some kind of an interest in seeing that as well. So what's your thoughts on going forward with our outdoor rinks?
Yes, so there wasn't a detailed analysis on your current provision of outdoor rinks as part of this project. However, we did hear from individuals and groups about the appreciation of what you did last year, the need for a mix of leisure skating and like sort of boarded hockey type rink. Often we kind of forget about the leisure skater, so kind of no sticks and pucks. And then also to have that stick and puck opportunity as well. But it was noticed from your community what you did in terms of the expansion, and we know with COVID, the embracing skating, embracing outdoor activities and year-round activities. So you definitely kind of responded to that.
Great, thank you. We did a good job with putting out those outdoor rinks, and certainly commend Andrew for doing all that work. And I'd like to see that continue. And obviously, the community was appreciative of it. In the Uptown Core, so number 13, you had mentioned about a pocket park at night. And I know that in talking at some of our conventions, this is something that's really been pushed in some of the bigger centers. I don't know if we would have space down in the Uptown Olds area that would be able to accommodate a pocket park. Did you identify any possible locations or any spot for that?
Location analysis for the pocket park wasn't included in the process, but what it was identified as an opportunity for an enhancement to what you're currently doing. But yeah, no, not a location analysis.
Okay, thanks. So we'll have to take a look at that. Maybe work with Uptown Olds even. All right, thank you. I have no other questions.
Director Wagstaff?
You will hear from us shortly. When I say us, all of administration, both protective services, operations, and community services, about our plan for this winter and rinks. We're not yet at a point to be able to share with council and the public our plans, but to let you know, both public and council, we are working on returning a number of rinks, outdoor rinks, and servicing this winter. But not yet at a planning point to be able to share those details. But stay tuned, it is coming.
Okay, I think that about, Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Your Worship. Again, just a brief question. The report referenced some interesting emerging trends relative to moving away from team sports, moving towards online activities, moving towards unstructured outdoor activities. I'm not sure if I'm making a statement or a question, but obviously we would need to factor those in. Maybe that would suggest you would be spending less on indoor rinks, baseball diamonds, anything team-oriented, or am I taking that too literally?
Well, I mean, you do have strong participation in your youth sports in the community. But there also is a growing demand for drop-in, spontaneous use activities, and that doesn't necessarily mean less facilities. It just might mean different programming of facilities. So sometimes you'll see various facilities that are almost exclusively programmed by user groups, for example, and very little opportunity for drop-in, public use, unstructured youth use, and all of that. So that's where I think communities can really benefit from keeping an eye on that trend and saying it doesn't all have to be structured. It can be drop-in. It can be families coming and enjoying the facilities, but not having to be part of an organized group.
Well, Mr. Russo, we've had good dialogue here today, and our administration has made it very clear that we'll be revisiting this in the near future. So at this time, I would introduce Councillor, please, for a motion. Councillor Blatz.
Thank you, Your Worship. And thank you, Mr. Russo, for your excellent presentation and tremendous amount of reading that we had to do over the weekend. I did have some questions, but most of mine were answered earlier on, so I thank you for that. I move that Council accepts the Mountain View Regional Parks, Recreation, and Culture Master Plan as a planning document to guide future decisions regarding parks, recreation, and culture in Olds.
Final question. Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Your Worship. Sorry, I just had one more. I think earlier we mentioned that the cost of the study was covered by grants with no cost to municipalities. Can I ask, what was the cost to do the study?
Mr. Wagstaff?
So the study itself is $161,225 and $15,000 for the additional tourism component that was not originally in the scope, for a total of $176,222.
Very good. We have a motion on the floor. I will call for the vote. Those in favor? That's carried. Thank you so much for your time. Moving down on the agenda now, we are business arising out of the minutes. Seeing none. No bylaws today. Item 6A, new business, our bank signing authorities. And I'll ask Sheena.
Thank you. Yes, just with the recent election and the changes that have come, we need to update our signatories with our ATB, which is our general bank. And these two motions are required to do that.
Thank you. I do believe all council did receive a copy for that. So we have quite a lengthy motion here. I'm going to see if Councillor Walsh, would you be interested to entertain this motion?
Okay. I move that the following be removed as signatories from the Town of Olds Alberta Treasury Branches ATB banking accounts: Debbie Bennett, Mary Jane Harper, Michael Mishishka, Mary Ann Overwater, Mitch Thompson. You want two or just furthermore?
Believe that we can do and further.
Okay. Furthermore, that the following elected officials be added as signatories for the Town of Olds Alberta Treasury Branch, ATB banking accounts, James Cummings, Judy Dahl, Daniel Daly, Donald Harvey Walsh, and Darren Wilson.
Thank you. Does council have questions? All right, thank you. Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. Those in favor? That's carried. We'll move down now to reports from council, boards, and committees, and I think we'll start on this end. Just for the new councilors, this is reports. Of course, this is the newly elected council. This is the first time that you've done this, so just highlights of how you feel and where you're at. We'll start on this side with Councillor Daly.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just for clarification, you want my input on these reports?
This is your time to shine. This is when you get to share what you do on either boards, committees, or commissions, which you really haven't been to yet. However, you have been to some orientation sessions, et cetera, et cetera. So we'll let you go ahead and continue that.
Oh, okay. So, yeah, of course, as all the councillors and mayor has been involved in a lot of training and orientation in the last 2.5 weeks. I find it very, very informative. I've enjoyed all the exercises that we've participated in, and I have learned an exceptional amount on municipality government. And in the past week, we attended a conference up in Edmonton, which I feel was very well worth going to. And I appreciate the town for all their input into my training and upgrading as well going forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Perhaps I will go ahead for the new council, and maybe I'll make my report next and just give you an idea of what goes on. And this is strictly a report that you bring at your own discretion of what you feel. Now, I do have a written hard copy here for those of you that wish one, and I have given the legislative clerk. I will try to brief it for the sake of time. So as this is the first report from weekly elected officials, I'll summarize. October 22 to November 12 kicked off with 5 full days of orientation and 3 council meetings. We included 2 full days of 2022 interim budget and a full day of regional orientation with municipal area partnerships. This was key for our new council to engage and seek to understand each other through learning and interaction, and I truly did enjoy that. November 15 to 19, we gathered to attend the newly branded Alberta Municipalities, which was our old AUMA convention in Edmonton, attending 2 days education on the essentials of municipal governance and 3 days of board and committees, reports, education sessions, variety, etc. Opposition Leader Rachel Notley addressed the delegation on November 18th. Alberta Municipalities Distinguished Service Awards were presented to elected officials who served 20 or more years on municipal council. Also included were Award of Excellence and Municipal Environmental Awards. The Society of Local Government Managers Senior Team Award and Dedicated CAO Award was also presented. An important and timely part of the convention is our Alberta Municipalities Resolution session, as we all partook in full discussion and debate on the business for the greater good of all our communities. That's in Alberta. Final day was our AGM with the annual general meeting with the premier address from Jason Kenney along with Municipal Affairs Minister Rick McIver. There was also open dialogue sessions held with 13 provincial ministers. I can certainly pass this out, but I won't go through them for the sake of time. Council met with the RCMP Solicitor General, Minister of Municipal Affairs, and Minister of Transportation. Conversations around the table with each was engaging, with dialogue specific to the town of Olds. Our prepared briefing notes from administration and council was very well received. Sessions I attended were Building Indigenous Relations in Your Community, and the speakers were Chief Randy Ermiskin, Cree Nation, Wetaskiwin Treaty 6, and Tyler Gandam from the Mayor City of Wetaskiwin. Basically, he spoke with regards to 48 First Nation areas of residential school survivors and 35 residential schools in Alberta. There are 634 First Nations in Canada, and the elders provide the history. And he went in length to share that. The Cree are taught that you must earn your place in leadership. You don't just become a leader. His storytelling was heartbreaking, and he has written many short stories in his books and also shared his successes. The second session was cybersecurity. Speaker Ryan Duquette shared cybersecurity is a business issue, not a technical problem, and detailed stories of his experience. He will be putting up his presentation, and I'd like to review that once again. And the third was top tips for working with your municipal administration. That's with the Local Government Administration Association. It was moderated by our own Kelly Lloyd. And her panelists were the Town of Cochrane CAO, the Town of Stony Plain CAO, and the Town of Smoky Lake CAO. It was a great session. Each CAO shared their stories of working relationships with elected officials. And some of them were vice versa, elected officials to CAO. And finally, I'd like to wish and to extend a bouquet to all the volunteers and participants who brought this year's old-fashioned Christmas magic to our community. The Santa Claus Parade of Lights was bright, and streets lined with families of all ages. And on behalf of council and those who participated on the town float, we all enjoyed the feedback from the public, and we look forward to next year. And if anyone would like a hard copy of that report, I'd be happy to pass that on. So we'll continue, and maybe we'll just go back and forth. Councillor Ryan.
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. Thank you for your report. Very good. I've basically been fairly busy as well this past month. I participated in a call on behalf of Mountain View Seniors Housing with Minister Pond with regards to the affordable housing, the 10 strategy. This is a 10-year plan where they hope to, or the plan is to increase the numbers of units by 25,000. So hopefully that will occur in hopefully every community throughout the province. Then I also attended the Parkland Regional Organizational meeting, Parkland Regional Library, organizational meeting, where I was nominated and voted in as a representative of our own zone on the executive committee. I attended a Cape hospitality evening. This was actually a really good chance to network with other members of Cape. This was held in Didsbury and moderated by our own business rep, James Carpenter, who did a great job in introducing a couple of guest speakers at that. I attended the Mountain Views Seniors Housing Organizational meeting after 5 days of a convention. It was on the Friday coming home, so it was a very long day, where I was, that was the organizational meeting. A board meeting was held on the November 19th, but it was also a separate organizational meeting that was held before then, where I was acclaimed as the board chair, and the board meeting was held on November 19th. And also, again, attended the interim budget discussions, council regular meeting, PMP, orientation meetings, the Alberta Municipalities Conference, Muni 101, which was an education session for orientation, and a full written report from the Alberta Municipalities Association will be provided as soon as I finish writing it. Thank you.
Thank you. Before we go on, I'd also like to share that the new Minister of Transportation, Rajeen Sawhney, has gifted the town of Olds a beautiful Christmas decoration, I believe, And I would like to leave this with our legislative clerk for our Christmas tree. And we have a nice little card here with a note, and we could perhaps somehow put who it was from in the year for future Christmas tree decorating. Now we'll go back to Councillor Cummings.
Thank you, Your Worship. So, one thing that's been said to us quite a bit over the last few weeks is we'll be drinking heavily from the fire hose, and this little process kind of dribbled and I missed it. So my summary is going to be a little shorter, a little less formal. Of course, as a new councillor, we had the great opportunity for doing a lot of training, and that's been discussed quite a bit already, so I won't go into details on that. I've had an opportunity to sit down with the Public Art Advisory Committee with my colleague, Councillor Blatz. Some exciting news, I just wanted to highlight on that one there. So we've decided to test the processes that have been developed by the council previous on the public art engagement and how to process an application by reaching out to one of our community partners and asking them to begin an art process so that we can determine the feasibility of the entire policy and procedures, and then come back to council with some recommendations. That hasn't been done yet. I have reached out to the Uptown Olds Association to start that engagement process, so hopefully we'll get some good news and some good feedback on it. I was appointed as the representative for the town for the Olds Institute. I did finally receive a response back from their president, from our president, the old, I don't know if that's ours or theirs. Don't know which hat I'm wearing right now. Mr. Brett Misheka, there is an issue going on right now at the Olds Institute due to some resignations on the board on whether or not we can actually meet as a board due to the bylaw restrictions on the number of people. So we're going to try to work that out and get that going back up, but hopefully we can make that work. I did attend some events. As Councillor Ryan mentioned, CAPE event in Didsbury was very successful and very enjoyable. We did get to meet a lot of our peers in the area. And I'll butcher the name of the Indigenous group that was there as well to try to partner with the communities of Central Alberta. So I'm not going to try to name them at this time, but it'll be in my written report later. Of course, the Santa Claus Parade on Saturday, which was fantastic. The town did a great job making the float up for us, and we tried not to take credit for it when we were waving at everybody. I would like to point out that there was a second Remembrance Day ceremony held at the Cenopath at 10 o'clock, not officially through the Legion, but there was a good attendance of about 40 or 50 people there, as well as the 100 or so people that were at the Legion's event at the Legion facility itself. So it was also very well received to have that secondary option at the Legion itself outside. And then I will, at some point, follow up with a written report as well. Thank you.
Thank you. It's your first summary, so, you know, you're doing very well. Now we'll go back to Councillor Walsh.
Just for some brevity, I'm going to say thank you, Mayor and Councillor Ryan. I've attended most of the courses in the EOPC and AUMA that you've discussed already, so I won't repeat it. Of all the, well, not of all, the committees that I've been assigned to, only one has met so far, and that's Olds Fiber Limited. Still trying to get my head around what a municipal control corporation looks like. But that was an organizational meeting that happened last week. Also, it was interesting, especially walking around the trade show at AUMA, is people recognize me. I'm going, oh, it's interesting that people in Stantec and Cape and people who I haven't seen for over 4 years, and they acknowledge that, hey, you're back. So have not much more to offer today.
MCC is a board. It's not a committee, just for your information. Councillor Blatz?
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm not going to repeat everything that all of my colleagues have said. I've attended almost every one of the same conferences, training sessions and meetings, although I did attend the Public Art Advisory Committee meeting. That's my first committee meeting. And other than that, I do have to say I enjoyed the AUMA or AM now conference that we just attended, and I like the greetings that we got from Mayor Sohi and the Premier and our interim board chair, Angela Duncan. And I'm looking forward this week to attending the Rural Municipalities Association Conference in Edmonton again, and we'll be providing a written report by the end of the week. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And Councillor Wilson?
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a couple items, and I touched on one or two already during our budget reviews, but November 10th, the Mountain View Region Water Services Commission had their organizational meeting, followed by a regular commission meeting. And there will be, upcoming on November 29th, the budget meeting. So looking very much forward to that. And as I said in our budget discussion, there was the warning given that there are cost pressures that the commission is seeing in the neighborhood of 10 to 15% from some of their vendors, their suppliers, their contractors. So it will be interesting to see how that budget discussion evolves. As far as other activities, again, I won't go into much the same ones that have already been mentioned, other than I did attend the teepee raising ceremony mid-November-ish, which was very informative, very educational, listening to one of the elders there talking about inclusion and respect and acceptance of all people. And as far as the recent convention in Edmonton, the AUMA convention, in addition to, as mentioned, cybersecurity and tips for working with administration, I also attended the hydrogen workshop, which again was very educational, and a huge potential market, a time horizon of 10 plus years, billions, if not trillions of dollars potentially as a prize in terms of hydrogen export markets and developing the demand side of that equation. Clearly, Alberta is well positioned with its resources, its natural gas, its reserves, its condensate supply or wet gas, and the expertise we have as far as labor. So well positioned on the supply side with its infrastructure and everything. The challenge will be creating and building the infrastructure for that demand, which is focused initially on transportation corridor, the Highway 2, and replacing diesel with hydrogen. And that's about it.
Good. That was the elder from the Stony Reserve at Morley that was doing the teepee raising, and who made it very clear that they do not take photos during their ceremony, as I'm sure that Doug's learned. And the reason being is they like their stories to be shared, and it's the women that do the storytelling, and they want to keep their history in the same. Thank you very much, everyone. So at this time then, I'll just ask for a motion to accept the reports. Who would like to make that? Councillor Wilson?
Thank you, Your Worship. I will make the motion to accept for information the various reports as tabled at the council meeting.
Those in favor? That's carried. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. There's no quarterly financial position today. Now we are at page 232, correspondence and information. We do have all the information, and I do have, our CEO has an added item to that, and that would be item 9E.
Thank you, Your Worship.
Oh. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, just in regards to the correspondence, the Red Deer River Municipal Users Group, just want to highlight that a CAO, Mr. Rudy Friesen from Village Cremona, is obviously within Mountain View County, and he'll be taking over the executive director role for that organization beginning January of 2022. There's correspondence from Mountain View County in regards to who will be sitting on committees that are important to the town of Olds, such as the ICC and MAP, so that has been highlighted. Chinook's Edge School Division have sent a media release outlining their policy and procedures in regards to COVID and who can attend meetings and come into their facilities, so to speak. The Library Association of Alberta just wanted to congratulate all those who were elected and also to basically highlight the importance of the Library Association and the library system. And the information item is the Coyote Cup of curling, and I'll ask Director Wagstaff to briefly speak about that.
So longly awaited. Originally, we were to have been a host community for the Grand Slam of curling in 2020. So it is still on slate for us to host May 3rd to the 8th, 2022. And this week, Thursday, November 25th, there will be a ticket launch. There has been a lot of work from the community committee, that is the host committee, in preparation for this. There are still many things in flux with regards to regulations and working with Sportsnet and COVID in the end. Still a little bit of uncertainty there, but we are working through those. We have been able to enhance the viewing experience because they have gone down to 4 rinks from 5 sheets of ice, so that allows us some space along the far side of the arena to add some booths, which for those who were here when the Boston Pizza Cup was hosted in the Sportsplex, they will recall that there were booths along the east wall, and we'll be able to do that again. But again, for information, if people would like tickets, they can go to thegrandslamofcurling.com and begin to purchase tickets Thursday, November 25th. And for anyone who is interested in volunteering, the committee will be opening up the volunteer opportunities in the latter part of January. Again, we're just sorting out what those needs are going to look like in a COVID compliant atmosphere. So tickets go on sale, and get ready to rock, Olds.
Thank you, Mr. Wagstaff. Okay, if there's nothing further, we'll get a motion, please, to accept correspondence. Councillor Blatz?
Thank you, Your Worship. I move that correspondence and information report ending November 22nd, 2021 be received for information.
There's nothing further to add? Those in favor? That's carried. Thank you very much. Councillor Wilson?
Thank you, Your Worship, and apologies, I probably should have chimed in earlier, but, and Director Wagstaff, I can't remember if I asked this question before. I know earlier we had talked about sponsorship with regard to this event, the curling event. I don't know if I asked or if we talked about the potential economic benefit to Olds as a result of this event?
So as part of hosting this event, we are going to be doing an economic assessment, so that we'll have a baseline for hosting this type of events and very specifically know what the economic benefits were to our community. So that is part of the host committee's budget. We've scheduled in to do that. As with regards to opportunities for sponsorship, we do have 2 community members that are heading up the sponsorship. I don't know what happened to my mic there. If you have anyone who is interested, you can direct them to community services at olds.ca, and we'll ensure that hook them up with the 2 community members who are heading up the sponsorship.
Very good. Your timer went off and he got it in. Okay. That was a good one, Councillor Wilson. All right. At this time, council will be going into a closed session. And I'm not certain who you would like to be in the closed session. Please state.
Thank you. This will be under FOIP Section 17, disclosure harmful to personal privacy, and it will be the CAO and all members of council only.
All right. All members of council only. So thank you, Director Andrew and Director Wagstaff and the media, except Director Greco. Oh, and Director Linderman. She's so quiet today. So while they're preparing, I will read, when the council goes into a closed session, meeting attendees have two options for continued participation in the virtual council meeting. You may stay online in the virtual meeting platform, and administration will pause the live stream while council is in their closed session. Once council has returned, the meeting will be brought back into the open meeting forum. You may leave the virtual meeting platform and watch our Town of Olds website and Facebook pages for live updates as to when council will return to open forum to rejoin the meeting. Administration will post when the meeting will reconvene, and the meeting attendees are able to rejoin the virtual meeting at that time. May I have a motion, please, to move into closed session? Councillor Daly.
I so move that we move into closed session on November 22nd at 11:35.
Those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Thank you, Marcy. Now, no mics or mics? Because you can hear it through the building.
Can everybody hear me?
from Disney.
A lot of people want to know about my family. Well, we have a magical house and magic gifts.
What's your gift?
Mirabel didn't get one.
On November 24th.
Casita?
The family is in danger.
I'm losing my gift!
It's all gonna come down to you.
I can do this. And at least I'll have a friend. Nope, he flew away immediately. Quitter!
Disney's Encanto. Only in theaters November 24th.
Thank you for all your patience. I would now ask for a motion for adjournment. We're good? We have quorum? Councillor Daly? Adjournment? Those in favor? Carried.